From all around there comes a low, deep rumble, one that seems to shiver the very rock beneath our feet. "Guys?" Jamie says, but his sentence goes unfinished. The pillar in the center of the cavern, ringed by stone and by the dark, shifting ring of water, has begun to glow. Not from the rock itself, you understand, but from a multitude of tiny, minuscule holes all across it, holes that I hadn't even noticed before. Little pinpricks of red and blue light filter out and into the cave, and Gaza takes a step towards it, the light sparkling in his eyes. Except he's not looking at the pillar, he's looking down into the water. "It's them," he murmurs. "The gems." I follow his gaze, and sure enough, there they are. Another cluster of those ethereal quartz and crystals, glittering just beneath the water's surface. "I always thought there would be more," Gaza says, seemingly unconcerned by the tremor that shudders through the walls and ground. "I heard that there was a whole field of them." Still, he reaches down. Crouching slightly, he reaches out a hand towards the water. "Wait!" Jamie shouts at him, and Gaza pauses, turning back to his friend. "Don't do it!" "Why?" Gaza asks. A flicker of confusion passes over Jamie's face. "I don't..." He struggles for words. "I don't know. It just feels... It feels wrong." "Feels wrong? Fuck off, mate," Gaza replies, but Jamie darts forward and grabs him, shoving him away from the water and the pillar and out into the cavern. "What the hell are you doing?" Gaza shouts angrily, stumbling but keeping his footing, shoving Jamie right back, and as the two threaten a fight, the walls of the cave, to my horror, start to move. The painted shapes and figures start to twitch and writhe as if they are dancing or desperately waving. But it isn't them, I realize. It's the rock upon which they are painted. I watch in terror as an outcrop of stone starts to crack and chip. A large reptilian leg pries itself free. A great snake-like segmented body becomes clear in the darkness, and it starts to steadily climb down the walls. "It's in here!" I call out to the group in alarm. "The creature is here!" And that's when I see the second of the creatures, and the third, and the fourth. There was never just one. They are everywhere. They start to appear across the high ceiling. Boulders in the corners of my eyes start to uncoil. I see them slither from the rock piles at the cavern's edge. The hissing returns and rises to a terrible chorus. I look around at the others, and I see that Darcy is already encouraging Macy through a tiny gap in the wall, close in size to those terrible tunnels. Macy crawls through, army style, and disappears from sight. Darcy calls out to us, "Guys!" Jamie positions himself between Gaza and the gems. Gaza swears at the boy and grits his teeth. He casts one long, lingering look at the gems, sparkling and shining in the ring of water, then tears away his gaze, and heads reluctantly for the crack in the wall. Jamie grabs my hand and pulls me over. I crouch down at the entrance to the gap in the wall and follow the others. "Jamie," I begin, but he hurries me through. "Just go!" So I do. I see them gather behind him, the creatures, shifting shapes in the shadows, and I bitterly look away as I push myself through the tunnel as fast as I can. My leg stings where I cut it earlier, but I ignore the pain, as well as the bruises forming on my elbows and knees, and follow the others through the dark, scrambling across the stone, my breathing loud in my ears. And once again, to my relief, the tunnel does come to an eventual end. And to my greater relief, there's Jamie crawling out of the tunnel behind me. "Jamie!" I say with a grin. I can't help myself, and I help haul him to his feet. He is deathly pale and silent. He manages a weak smile as his eyes meet mine, but he says nothing. "Quickly, but Christ, watch your footing! Single file, okay?" comes Darcy's voice, and I turn to see what she's talking about. The way ahead is obvious, but dangerous. Before us lies a narrow bridge of rock that extends across the length of a great chasm, and to our right, my heart sinks. To our right, and half embedded in the stone, is an enormous lizard-like skull. It is beyond massive, whale-like or bigger. The bridge of rock which we must now cross is at the rough level of the skull's lower jaw. Those jaws are lined with hundreds upon hundreds of teeth, of varying shapes and sizes. The skull is eyeless, eye socketless, I should say. Where one would expect to see gaps for eyes are just layers of smooth, cave-darkened bone. There's no real time to stare in awe, or to contemplate. Darcy pushes on ahead, carefully making her way across the bridge. One wrong step, and she'd fall, down to the rocky depths below, lost forever. Like Margaret. I shiver. What happened to that woman? Her desperate words through the radio ring through my head. I put my arms out for balance as I cross the bridge. I am no longer sure if I can hear the hissing at the edge of my hearing, or if I'm simply imagining it. The echoey ambience of the cavern plays nasty tricks on your hearing. With a final stumble at the far end, Gaza reaches out to balance me. We wait for Jamie and then sprint up away into the caves. Macy struggles with the effort, and Jamie once again helps her up onto his back. I pant with growing exhaustion. They're never gonna stop, are they? They're gonna keep coming. Unless we make it back, Darcy replies. Unless we make it back to the surface. The monsters, I say through breaths to Jamie beside me. They didn't kill you, I want to say, but I can't find the words. Jamie knows what I'm trying to say. They came so close. I could feel them behind me. I could see them in the corners of my eyes. I could hear them hissing, and I thought this is it. But it wasn't. I think on what Macy told us about her dream. Jamie, did they speak? Did they talk to you? Jamie does not reply. We pass by great, coiling spires of slippery stone. We cross another of those terrifying bridges, though one a little wider this time. We race past an enormous hanging stalactite, far out in the distance of the cavern, surrounded by an almost perfect ring of smaller spikes in the shadows of the ceiling. Wait! I shout with excitement, coming to such a sudden stop that Gaza knocks into my back, and I am temporarily winded as Darcy helps me up. I swallow in some air. Don't you recognize those stalactites out there? Yes, Darcy replies cautiously. Yes, I think I do. We've passed them before. When did we pass them last? When we were still with Margaret, Jamie says solemnly. This is the way she led us back before getting us lost. We were on the other side, I say, heart pounding with tiredness. And with hope. I'm sure of it. It's the same circle of stalactites. But the angle's wrong. We were higher up. The ledge on the opposite side is taller by a few meters than the one we stand on now. I point. That's where we need to go. Jamie hoists Macy up a little higher on his back. Then what are we waiting for? Gaza is being quieter than usual, and I look at him with concern. His face, however, is hidden in shadow. Obscured behind the corona of light from his torch, he falls in step. We make our way around the edge of the cavern to the identified point, a little slower now. The hissing seems largely to have ceased, but I remain very much on edge. The gems are poison, Gaza, I say to him quietly so the others can't hear. You must see that. The paintings on the cave walls of the creatures. They're the only things drawn in red and blue, the colors of the gems. I'm not an idiot, he mutters back, but there was time. I could have grabbed one, prized it free from the stone, just the one. He looks down into his open, empty hand, slowly closing his fingers. Just one. You made the right choice, I try to reassure him. They're not worth it. And besides, they're just lumps of stone. They could have been worth pennies. Sure, Gaza replies, and his tone suggests that the conversation is done. Angela's right, Jamie says after a little while longer. As we stand on the ridge of the cavern's opposite side. This is exactly the place, he points. That's where Margaret led us through the crack in the rock. We were being followed even back then, says Gaza grimly. There could be any number of those monsters still around here. Then let's not stick around, Jamie says. I say we retrace our steps back to the ledge where you guys hauled me up and out of the water. From there we should be okay. Come on. I look at Darcy. She is stock still, barely even breathing. Darcy? I say. Does that sound okay to you? A good plan, do you think? Darcy doesn't answer. She only nods, then gestures us onwards. And so, that is exactly what we do. We trudge carefully and quietly back through the dark, across winding paths of stone, until we reach the ledge. I am disturbed to see that the water still hasn't settled since our debacle, and it ripples and shimmers subtly as we look down to it, the illusion of the deep cavern still broken. Right, Jamie says, looking around. Margaret led us back up there. Guys, try to think. Which way was it that Margaret led you down? Gaza and I look around, struggling for the memory, but Darcy sets off at once, round at a slight deviance from the way we just came. Gaza and I exchange a glance. It seems right, so we follow, back through the cavern. I walk a little faster to catch up with Darcy at the front. Is everything okay? Is everything okay? I murmur. What's going on? Something's up, isn't it? Darcy smiles weakly at me, but says nothing. I grimace with frustration. I'm starting to get a little sick of people not talking to me. Darcy, I say a little more urgently. What's up? Are we in danger? Yes, she replies under her breath, in a way that chills my blood. What is it? I ask, glancing behind us into the dark. The others aren't far behind. It's been watching us since the stalactites, Darcy mutters, almost imperceptibly. Angela, don't look. But it's on the ceiling. It's right above us. It's above us right now. A terrible wave of icy fear passes through me, and I know that she is right. Simply by speaking the words out loud, I know that they are true. My ears pick up the slight scuttling, one I hadn't noticed before, back when I'd only been listening for that terrible hiss. Directly overhead. I can see it in my mind's eye, crawling and slithering around the rocks up above, one with the shadows and stone in its pursuit. Why? I consider with terror. Why wouldn't it just strike? Margaret screams through the radio's return to my memory. Just keep walking, Darcy whispers. Keep moving. So we do. Back past the puddles. I cringe in panic as I step down into a particularly deep one, making a noise that echoes into the darkness. But nothing happens. Up we clamber, up past familiar pillars of rock, back past the place where Gaza pushed Jamie over the edge. And there, up ahead, is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Round a corner of rock comes a faint, purple glow. It's the glow of one of the lamps. I'm sure of it. The lamps they use for the trail. I don't dare to believe it until the corner has been rounded, and I can see the lamp with my own 2 eyes. The relief amongst the group is palpable. Yes! Shouts Gaza. Fucking yes! We made it. Oh Christ, we made it. Jamie breathes with relief. Macy has begun to cry, but Darcy and I remain silent. The lamps are obvious now, glowing in faint green and turquoise and purple. They'll lead us back to the entrance. Darcy's radio begins to crackle, and through it comes the voice of a man. The man from the beginning, I remember. The one who asked Margaret if she was all right to lead. Third call, comes his voice, rich with concern. Third call for Task Group 5. Please make yourselves known and return to the rendezvous. We're calling off the search for the day. Repeat, we're calling off the search for the day. Darcy brings up the device to her mouth. We have her, she says. Fear and excitement and hope all rolled into the inflections in her voice. We found Macy. Please get everyone out of the caverns as fast as you can. Over. The group scurries up behind her, back to the safety of the light. And perhaps, against my sense of better judgment, I allow myself one final look. One last quick look behind me. And my eyes are caught at once in the spell of the gems. For there they are, just a little further back in the caves, beyond the immediate reach of the lamp. Glittering in shades of ruby and aquamarine in the darkness, a cluster of shining, shimmering quartz. How did we miss them? They were right there this whole time. How do we pass by them so easily? I think about what I said to Gaza. They're poisoned, I had said. I had said so matter-of-factly. I told him that he made the right choice by leaving them behind. I can feel the red and blue lights sparkle bright, reflecting in my eyes. How arrogant of me to say such things to him. After all, what do I know, really? I wouldn't have to tell the others. I could walk right over and prize one free. I consider it. I really, really do. Perhaps I would have done if the lights of the gems hadn't suddenly gone dark. I blink. Where once there were beautiful crystals, there now sits perched on the rock a simple cluster of dark stone, broken, dull gray shards. And this cluster moves. It moves along with the rock upon which it's held, and the rocks around it too. Just beneath the cluster, the long, dark mouth of the reptilian creature becomes clear. It snarls silently with its long, black jaws full of terrible teeth. The segmented shell of its snake-like body cracks free from its surroundings with a little burst of stone, and a lizard-like leg is suddenly visible at its side. I am frozen in terror. I cannot move. To move would be to make noise. I am silence itself, staring, with a final, low, warning hiss. A deep, crocodilian noise from the back of its throat. The shadowy lizard turns away, and the lightless black rocks upon its head go with it. Away it slinks, back down into the depths, back to the shadows of its home, disappearing into the darkness. I back away, one step, then another. Then I turn and I run. I run after the others, back up the cavern towards the entrance, through the welcome light of the lamps. And so, we told them all our story. Our talk of monsters and skulls and the gems were listened to thoughtfully, but they didn't believe a word. You could see it in their eyes. Macy was returned to her family. The caves have been sealed off pending further investigation, and a more qualified team of professionals have gone down in search of Margaret. She was never supposed to lead us so deep, apparently. Would she have done if Gaza hadn't pushed Jamie off the ledge? Maybe. Maybe not. We'll never know now. Because they're never going to find Margaret. They didn't hear her final message through the radio. They didn't hear her screams. And I find myself these days thinking often of a particular conversation. A conversation that took place between Margaret and Gaza on our initial way down. Regarding the crystals. It's highly unlikely there are any actual gems, Margaret had claimed with such certainty. And if there ever were, they'll be long gone by now. Try not to be so selfish. Selfish? Gaza had snorted. Are you trying to tell us that you won't even take one if you saw one? You leave them here in the cave where they ain't any good to anyone? If there were any quartz down here, I can assure you, I'd leave them well alone. They're artifacts. I'd log the location and inform the relevant experts so they could be studied. Bullshit, you'd take one. Margaret had shrieked in response with such vibrant, outraged indignation. I would not!